You have got to be kidding me. Okay, so we're going to try a new format. Now, you'll recall from a few weeks ago I had the video on sniper rifle suggestions. I figured I would expand that format and cover a topic that's been a little bit heated, let's say, lately in the Foxhole community. And before anyone asks, yes, I was inspired by Perun. He does very good PowerPoint presentations on much more depressing subjects, so I'll stick to Foxhole, because that's what I know best. As the title says, an in-game counter to Skynet, radio and map decoys, and how they could be implemented in Foxhole. Okay, so what will I be covering in this suggestion? I'll start off with what is Skynet as it relates to Foxhole. What can, if anything, be done from the dev's perspective on the matter? The suggestion I am putting forward, which is decoys, and of course how decoys would work with various levels of implementation. What I will not be covering in this presentation is I will not talk about Skynet's balance, as it were. There's plenty of discussion on that already. I don't think I have anything useful to add to that. I will not talk about whether it is or is not against the terms of service for the game. I will bring up some past examples, but ultimately this is an issue for the devs to decide. And I will not go into any of the drama, as this will be a highly analytical and constructive presentation. At least I hope it will be. Okay, so what is EWS, aka Skynet? Skynet is the colloquial name given to what is actually referred to as the early warning system. Essentially, it warns players currently employing the EWS through Discord pings to possible map activity. There's 4 assumptions, though, about these pings and how they're generated. Number 1, players actually have to be feeding into the system. They have to actively feed information to the system. That has an asterisk next to it because that is the component that my suggestion will focus on. The next assumption is that players are actually online to react if a ping is called out. The next is that players haven't muted the Discord pings for being too annoying, because I've read several reports that the pings are pretty relentless. And number 4, the information being fed to the system is analyzed correctly. Okay, so how does the early warning system actually work? It utilizes browser functionality because it runs off of Electron, much like things like Google Chrome, Google Hangouts, or something you may or may not be familiar with, Discord. Quote, players volunteer to stream to the early warning system while they sleep or go to work, etc. They open the website, they set up the stream, and then they go AFK. Quote, the early warning system takes screenshots periodically, analyzes them, and sends them to the server where they are processed. Quote, then they are posted, for example, to Discord channels. That's where people will receive the notification that something might be going on. You can see an example on the right over there of a single, presumably boat in Endless Shore that is being pinged by the system. Now, this information is all in quotes because they come directly from the man who created them, which is Castow. So, as far as I'm concerned, this is the best possible explanation I can give on a single PowerPoint slide. Now, going through this, you'll notice that this really in no way, shape, or form can be considered hacking. It's not modifying or stealing information from the game, it's simply taking information that's being fed to it by players. A human could fill this role. I guess that's where a lot of the complaints come from, is that a person isn't behind investigating each of the maps and whatnot. So, what options are available to the devs? Now, I want to preface this by saying, strictly speaking, the devs don't have to do anything about this. Many people are asking for the system to be stopped, or taken down, or made to be against the terms of service. Just for a little bit of, let's say, historical context, I wanted to bring up this screenshot that I took. This is from a post from 4 years ago that reads, unpopular opinion, Foxhole stats is a bad idea. Discuss. Foxhole stats, of course, being the website that pretty much all heavily invested Foxhole players use to check up on the state of the war. This post was made 4 years ago, and it still has 22 upvotes. If you posted something like this in the Foxhole Reddit today with that same title, I almost guarantee it would be universally downvoted for being such an outlandish suggestion. So, just, putting all of this into a little bit of context. And for the record, Foxhole Stats does take from the Foxhole and Steam APIs to generate much of their data, so arguably Foxhole Stats takes more from the game than the early warning system, but I digress. So what options are available to the devs? Well, first option is they could do nothing. They could simply decide that the early warning system doesn't violate the terms of service, that it's really not that big a deal, and as a result they do nothing. It's perfectly possible for them to do that. The next option is that they could attempt to intervene outside the game. If they determine that it's, against terms of service, that it's considered an unfair advantage or whatever, they could try to go into the Discords and try to stop people from using this. They could try. This raises many questions about what counts against terms, etc. Like I said, Foxhole Stats may or may not fall into this category. Again, depends how you define the terms and whatnot. But then also, how much time would be spent / wasted enforcing these new policies? Are they going to be chasing people around Discords? They're going to be taking down names and referencing their Steam names as a result? That sounds like a lot of time that could be spent developing the game. Which is the third thing they could do. They can do what they already do. Develop the game. And no, this isn't a cop-out. This leads into my suggestions. So what are my suggestions? Well, map and radio decoys. What are they? Essentially, they would be new in-game items that allow players on both sides to generate fake, or decoy, map intel in the game for enemy teams to intercept. The two main types I envision are static passive and static active. So for static passive, these would be constructible or placeable items such as, say, scarecrows, or dummy tanks that generate one single point on the map at their location, so that the enemies would pick these up and think that these are actual units on the battlefield. Static active would be a placeable item similar to the listening kit that generates several fake or false map icons to trick the enemies. Okay, so here's a mock-up of passive decoys. Again, here's the fake wooden tanks from Valkyria Chronicles 4. And here is the potential to set up fake armies to throw off enemy scouts. You set these up in a base behind the lines, partisans see this on their map with their radio backpacks, and think, oh, hey, here's a fully loaded vehicle bay with a ton of things we can steal. They break in, and then they realize, oh, these are just a bunch of fake tanks or dummies. We've just been had. Now, I know what you're thinking, but obviously, Bear, they would be able to tell just by looking at them through binoculars that these are fake tanks. They'd have a different texture and stuff. Well, maybe, or the devs could implement some kind of system where you could only really tell if you're close whether they're fake or not. A paint job can do quite a lot. So here's an example of what I'm talking about.
Where's the real tank? Engaging. Watch out for...
All in a day's work.
No!
I smell blood.
Oh, and for the record, that map screen wasn't a bunch of decoys, it was a bunch of buses. Crazy wardens. Okay, so for the next mock-up is the active decoy. This is probably the more interesting suggestion among the two. The item generates fake map points for the enemy team. Ideally, these would periodically move around and have a fixed number to give the impression of a real moving force. If it just randomly spawned icons on the map, people would be able to tell simply from the patterns, but if it spawned a limited number that moved around slightly, it might give the impression of an actual force. So here I have an example of what I'm talking about. The blue compass icon, let's say, is the active decoy system. This is what the Wardens would see from the Warden perspective, and the red circle around this point is its maximum range to generate map icons. What the Colonials would see, however, is something more like this. Obviously, they wouldn't see the red circle, but a bunch of seemingly Warden icons would pop up on the map. You could see 4 vehicles and 3 foot soldiers. Now it would be up to the Colonials to decide, are these real, is this a threat, or do we need to send someone to scout it out? And this would, to my understanding, fool the early warning system at the data collection phase. If someone is streaming this map to the system, the map would pick up these icons, register them moving around as a change, and ping the server saying that, hey, there's partisans here, even though in reality there are not. So how would you use them? How would you use map decoys? Well, it's really up to your creativity, but here's some examples I can think of. 1. Cover for naval landings. Pretty obvious. Naval landings are highly vulnerable at the early stages. If you can bait the enemy away from the beach you're landing at say another beach, then you have a greater chance of setting up a foothold. How about setting up false ambushes to force alternate logi routes? Place these on some main roads, and then the logi will divert to another route. And then, hey, maybe you can set up an actual ambush on that alternate route. Bait QRFs away from partisan forces. If you're planning on doing partisan activity in a region, why not place a few of these down, bait the QRFs away from your actual position, kill a bunch of trucks, and then make off with the loot. Or maybe the quick reaction forces start getting used to the idea of these map decoys laying around. Maybe they leave a few up because they're convinced that, oh, this is just another decoy, and then the actual partisan forces slip into the region using these areas that they know the quick reaction forces are no longer reacting to because they've gotten used to it. As I said before, set up decoy storage yards for enemy partisans. They break in, they realize they've been had, and then they leave empty-handed. Or, an interesting thought I had was, why not use them to amplify the perceived amount of troops in a given area? Let's say the Colonials are besieged in abandoned ward. Wardens have 60 soldiers attacking, and the Colonials only have 20 or so soldiers defending. Why not place a few of these decoy beacons around to make it look like the Colonials have 60 or 80 troops defending abandoned ward? Maybe it'll force the Wardens to play defensive or back off. Maybe. Or how about set up a decoy and leave a funny message for the enemy? Here's a mock-up of the bait and switch scenario I was talking about. You could see the map decoy in the center there, cutting the main road from Iron Junction to Scurvyshire. Logi takes an alternate route, and then partisans ambush along the secondary road. Imagine finding this as a QRF. This is my funny scarecrow here with a little sign saying that I send my regards to whoever finds it. Are there real-world examples of this? Of course. Of course there are. Inflatable tanks. I'm sure a lot of you history lovers have been thinking about these since I mentioned the suggestion of decoys. Deception plays a huge part in real-world warfare. Dummy tanks and fake armies, such as the ones used in Operation Fortitude, to draw off German defenders from Normandy to other ports like Cherbourg or Pas-de-Calais in France. Or chaff drops by the RAF prior to the Normandy landings. I'm referring, of course, to Operations Glimmer and Taxable, which deployed huge amounts of aluminum chaff into the air that was then picked up by German radar on the Atlantic Wall, away from the beach landings in Normandy. These huge radar signatures really helped to solidify the idea in the Germans' mind that the landings were taking place elsewhere, not Normandy. Alright, so closing thoughts on this idea. EWS, by strict definition, isn't hacking, but it has started a heated discussion within the Foxhole community. I believe an in-game improvement is the best solution because even if people are disappointed if this overrides or makes EWS useless, at least everyone still gets new tools in-game to play around with. Decoys are the next potential step in intelligence gameplay, and a wide variety of decoys could be employed by both sides to create or support a wide variety of operations, or create cover for said operations. Ultimately, my thoughts on this whole situation are, new mechanics that add to the game are always better than just saying, ban this, delete that, or nerf that item. And as the old saying goes, by Sun Tzu, all warfare is based on deception. Alright, well, that's my first updated format for my suggestion series. I'm sure I'll come up with a title by the time I upload this. Question I have for you is, how do you like the format? Oh, and of course, I guess, discuss the idea, and how would you employ decoys in Foxhole if they were added? How would you change up my suggestion? Or do you like my suggestion even at all? I'll leave that for you to decide in the comments down below. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk, and I will see you on the next one. Bear out.